One of the interesting things is within this space and the space we left before and the space behind me here, which is the synagogue, in these three spaces they found scrolls, they found inscriptions. I'll say that again. Behind me, in front of you, is the synagogue. Okay, and you're probably aware, but if you're not aware, I'll say it now, they found there some scrolls. But they also found scrolls that we just came out of before. And over here as well. My point being, we called that a synagogue, and one of the reasons, one of the justifications, was finding a so-called geniza. But guess what? We found also all the compartments adjacent to it in this direction, we also found scrolls. Okay, I'm going somewhere with this. We'll see if we can get into the synagogue. I'm not really sure. Actually, since you're in the shade here and it's pleasant, let me talk about the synagogue here, and this other group there will peek in afterwards. Okay? You guys have you guys actually gone into yet in the course a synagogue that's contemporary with the temple? Magdala. Yes or no? Where?
Magdala in Gamla.
Magdala. Good. And did you do the synagogue in Gamla?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So the very first ancient synagogue that's contemporary to the temple in Jerusalem that was found in this country and identified as such is the building behind me. Is this synagogue over here. It's the very first time we said, okay, this is a synagogue. So the question is, what was the... No. How did they come to that conclusion that was a synagogue? Okay, no, I think it's a very important question because it doesn't look like anything that a post-temple synagogue would look like. Okay, and therefore the question is, what is the roadmap? How do they know it's a synagogue? It starts off with the name. Synagogue is ancient Greek. In Hebrew it's called a Bet Knesset. The verb in Hebrew lekanes means to assemble or to gather people together. Our national assembly, also known as a parliament, is the Knesset. So a Bet Knesset, a house of assembly. Architecturally speaking, what is in common between this and Gamla and Herodian and Magdala on a certain level and others that have been found are these benches coming from all four directions, which means that the architecture itself is showing us a place where people can sit and gather and assemble. That's great. It doesn't mean that the function there was of a synagogue, okay? In a second we'll talk about what the function of a synagogue was. It doesn't mean that, okay? So the first thing they talked about there was going to be the architecture. The second thing they talked about regarding this building behind me here is they found in the back room, under the ground, some scrolls, some biblical texts. They said, oh, this must have been a geniza. Geniza is where you archive torn or damaged text that mention God. It doesn't have to be a sacred text. It could be even a letter that you wrote, and you wrote the corner, praise be God, okay? It's damaged, you don't throw that in the garbage. That's a geniza, that's an archive. So he said, oh, look, we have an archive here, a geniza. We have the architecture of assembly. We found the synagogue. But I just told you a few moments ago that over here, in the next few case-made spaces, they also found scriptures under the ground. So this is a geniza. What about this? Okay. My point is, in my opinion, until 8 years ago when Magdala was found, and Magdala is unique, or was unique. I think they found something similar now. And the second one was unique when they found it because it was the first one of these houses of assembly that actually had something in it, in situ, that has clear Jewish symbolism and also temple symbolism. And that's already saying something a lot more deeper to us. The fact that none of the others had them up to now, we kept calling them synagogues. Now that we found the same architectural structure, but in the middle of it we found something with clear Jewish symbols. That we're debating about interpreting them, but it's clear that they're Jewish symbols. Okay? So we know we found a synagogue. So this is really the first synagogue. It's not the oldest synagogue found in the world. So what would we talk about in here? The reason I'm doing this here and not over there is I'm not sure it's empty. Number one. Number two, I'm pretty sure if it is empty, it's in the sun. Okay, so we're doing this in the shade, in a breeze, and then we'll peek in there, we'll step in there after I've done this. What could you do in the synagogue? Okay, and it depends on how much time you have. So one subject could be, what is the role of the synagogue at the same time the temple exists? Another thing could be, what is the role of the synagogue after the temple is destroyed? What's the change? The second thing. Number three, what was found there? among the scrolls that were found, scriptures, they found parts of the book of Ezekiel with the vision of the dry bones. Okay, to remind you, I think we talked about this in the Valley of the Destroyed Communities in Yad Vashem, did we not? Okay, we talked about the same vision. We said that Ezekiel is a prophet who lives in exile in Babylon, and he is this transitional prophet, and this whole story, this vision of these bones in the valley that start to come alive, okay, and at the end of the vision, he's told that the children of Israel will be returned to their country. Okay, this is a redemptive kind of prophecy or vision. Yigal Yadin, in his book that he wrote, the popular book that he wrote 5 minutes after the excavation, wrote that his hands were shaking when he was holding it inside the synagogue, because guys, Yigal Yadin was the chief of operations in 48. He basically ran the war because the chief of staff was sick most of the war, and was the second chief of staff. Okay, in other words, he was one of the people instrumental to help create a modern Jewish state. And here he's holding a text that's over 2,000 years old. It's promising, where God, through a prophet, is promising that the Jews will be able to return to their land and have sovereignty. So obviously in his book he made a very nice thing, but it's also something that's very powerful. It's a very, very, I'm not disparaging it at all. It's a very, very powerful statement. Even if he wasn't who he was. Anybody finding that, okay, 13, 14 years after Israel's established, that's a very, very powerful moment. Okay, but that's something that was found in there. Now, just for your information, on Masada you have bar mitzvahs and you have bat mitzvahs, the male and female confirmation in Judaism, and even sometimes I suppose you have maybe weddings over here as well. Okay? It's a very interesting question which I'm not going to enter into this discussion whether it's a smart or not, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, or does it make sense, is the symbolism good, bad, or indifferent, because we're going to talk about Masada and its symbolism, what happened here from a Jewish perspective a little later on, then a Zionist one, try to understand, try to make some sense of this, try to understand the debate. When you bring a bar bat mitzvah, bring a girl over here as a symbolism, it's a beautiful landscape, it was a Jewish site, it's a mass suicide here. I mean, think about it. You have to frame this in a certain way, okay? But you should know they have Torah scrolls here, okay? And it is developed and designed. And in a lot of these rooms, there are plastic seats which are chained up. They unchain them, and you can. They also do it in the Beit Midrash. We started this morning. That's another place where you have it. But by the way, doing it in what was the first ancient synagogue ever found. It's not the oldest, but the first ancient one found. That's also a powerful symbolic moment. Without any connection to, yes, suicide, no suicide, and the actual story and who these people are, were they good guys or bad guys, the Sikaris/Zealots. In of itself, in an ancient synagogue, that's pretty powerful. That's like if we had, I don't know, a wedding in an ancient church that's 1,600 years old. Or if we had, do Muslims get married in mosques? Okay, yeah, okay, so imagine
it's
having...
not the ceremony itself, like, it's not like the dancing and all that.
No, the ceremony. So the ceremony. So imagine you're doing it in a mosque that's, I don't know, 1,300 years old. It's very close to the Prophet. That will be very meaningful to people. So it's the same kind of, you can conceptualize it that way, okay? But again, I think it's an interesting question whether it's the right thing to do. So let's peek in. There probably other groups here to see what it is. You've seen other similar synagogues.
Continuing the chain.
Good. Screaming, crying, laughing.
When do they do the No, Mondays and Thursdays. Mondays, Thursdays.
Tuesdays, is there like
Mondays.
Monday and Thursday.
Tuesday? There's no Torah reading.
Just Monday, Thursday. Wednesday.
Tuesday night. We're not spending a lot of time here. I just want to say over there. Just saying to you, if you have, it's very difficult to get into this space, by the way. Number one. Number two, most of the hours of the day, there's no shade here. So if you're going to sit a group down here, guys, most of the hours of the day, if you're sitting in the sun here, it's hot. You really cannot spend a lot of time here, and very often, okay, you have other groups. Please note Tristram's starling, also known as Tristram's grackle, okay, with the orange tips. You've met him before?
Yeah.
Okay, you're familiar with who discovered him and when?
The
Henry Becker
naturalist.
Tristram,
The naturalist,
1858, discovered 9 new species of birds not known to man in Palestine, Syria, Lebanon. And at least this one was named after him. Like I said, we're not spending a lot of time here. I just want you to see it. Okay, we talked about everything I want to talk about here, and we're moving on. Yes, please. What was the question? Sorry.